Auburn's doing everything it can to flip some Georgia targets. Let's talk about it.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's Recruiting Thursday and LinkedIn Jobs. They are the recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to achieve your 2023 goals. John Garcia, recruiting expert, joining us. And look, John, this staff, Auburn, Hugh Freeze, the whole staff, they're going after some Georgia guys. And let's start with Landen Thomas. Most places have him as the number one tight end in this class. He's a Georgia commit, but it sounds like Auburn's still doing the full court press on him.
Yeah, and just as important, Zach, Landen is still making visits. I think that's really where you have to try to gauge this thing to see if it's really got legs. And I think for Auburn's case, it absolutely does. Florida State just got him on campus there as well. So clearly there's still some at least due diligence being taken by Landen. And now with, this week's news of Todd Monken moving on to the NFL, great offensive coordinator, especially relative to the tight end position, right. You understand why maybe other programs feel like the door is a little bit more open than even just a week ago relative to that recruitment. But like you said, arguably the number one tight end in the country. So even independent of all of that, schools are going to press for a big modern age pass first type tight end like Landen Thomas. So you could understand why Auburn wants to implement that into its future plans, because really it hasn't been a big focal point in years prior. So now if you're Hugh Freeze and that staff, now you sell, hey, we're going to really start to prioritize the tight end. How about you help us kind of usher that era in? So you couple that with visits and just an openness that appears to be on board right now with Landen Thomas. And you kind of just never know. You wonder about the visits. Can they get back to Auburn consistently? Yeah. It's certainly geographically close, right? These are Colquitt County guys. That's South Georgia. You just got to go west, right across the line, and you're right there in Auburn. So you know that's always going to be a possibility and something to keep an eye on as time rolls on here. So you got them on campus once. Can you continue to do that process and make them feel that same level of prioritization from the Auburn perspective? And you keep swinging there. I think, again, it's another marker of Hugh Freeze, right? You have to have the ambition to go after guys who are once, or currently or once committed to the reigning champs. I mean, you pulled one off last year, right? Kay and Lee, longtime Georgia commit. Auburn, signed him after he flipped to Ohio State initially. So, why not continue to try to push in that direction?
Yeah, I want to ask you a question a little bit more zoomed out in a second about this, but Nikar, a talented receiver. Most places have him as a 4-star, John, 6 foot, 170, but he's committed to Georgia, and they're kind of putting the full court press on him as well.
Yeah, and these two are starting to be, floated into that package deal conversation, right? Both pass catchers, longtime friends, obviously play at the same high school down there at Colquitt County. So you start to wonder how much, looking around they're going to do, right? Very early commitments to UGA. And I think you view that so differently, not only with the Todd Monken departure. Obviously, there's going to be a new quarterback there in Athens. They've really retooled their own roster. So you start to look at guys who jumped on board before the 23 class was settled, before the portal dust was settled. And you just never know how that could potentially impact that next group of recruit. And pass catcher has been a very important topic around the Georgia community. It's like the only weakness that people really look into with UGA. So I think Nye can satisfy that to some degree with Georgia. But again, just like with his buddy Landen, folks seem like that door is open, and he's looking at maybe even more visits than Landen Thomas. And he's gone on the record about Auburn a little bit more than I've seen Landen, which typically tells you that maybe that door's a little bit more open. So you start to get into package deal conversations. is there a leader between the two, interpersonally, and it gets really fun to look at it from that perspective. But again, like Landen viewed as the number one tight end, Nye, an electric route runner in the slot. He can work outside. You can hand him the ball. He's a difference maker, the true explosive speed, which any offense is going to try to implement down the road. So you understand, again, why Auburn is trying to get in here. And I think with receivers in particular, I think with Marcus Davis at Auburn, it's going to be interesting, right? Because he didn't profile as one of these massive, wide receiver one type guys, younger guy, energetic guy, somebody that they can YouTube and actually find stuff, relative to Auburn for. So I think those recruiting pitches do hit a little bit differently. So I do think that, we're going to find out a lot about Davis over the next few months as a recruiter, but certainly kids appear to be resonating with him. And I think Nikar is one of them. Yeah,
Marcus Davis is like lone win so far. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but they went out and got the Cincinnati receiver Nick Martiner, but that's kind of been it. And I don't know how many opportunities he's really been given so far, because I think wide receiver wasn't really what they were going after to finish the 2023 class. John, what do you think about the strategy of going after guys that you want that are committed to a powerhouse, committed to your rival, when it's been pretty well documented? Like Hugh Freeze has spent every waking second working and pounding the trail, when maybe you could use this time to get other guys that maybe still are gettable or still not committed somewhere. What do you think of his strategy? I mean, you've covered this nationally. You've seen a million different approaches. What do you think about this one?
I love it. I mean, that's if I'm a fan, that's what I want. I want my coach going after the best, regardless of where they're from, regardless of who they may be verbally committed to. If a kid shuts the door and says, "Hey, look, I'm done. I'm going to school X. Thanks for recruiting me." Fine. You do have to have an awareness and turn the page at the appropriate time. But by all indication, the Nikars, the Landen Thomases of the world aren't giving you that indication. So as long as they view the door as open, it's something that you've got to vet, because this is a total overhaul. This is not a quick fix. This isn't a plug and play kind of situation like we've seen over the last few years. This is a total philosophical overhaul. So the roster, the talent, even the depth of talent will all look and feel different in the years to come. So it means you've got to be widespread, but you've got to be bold. You've got to go start at the very top when you start to look at these classes. And it's so early in the class of 24. I think if there's any coaching staff that's already kind of moved down a tier or something like that, I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because there's so much that can happen. There's so many opportunities to get recruits on campus, especially when you're Auburn, when you're geographically like in the literal middle of the SEC and ACC footprint. You can get, a lot of folks can get to you pretty quickly. And obviously, even if you have to fly, that's something that could be to your advantage. So I expect ambitious attempts really throughout his entire tenure there at Auburn. And I'm not surprised to see it right out of the gates. I mean, they finished 23 better than most of us would have expected. And 24 is off to a really nice start. Again, probably a little bit above expectation. So they're seeing something we don't hear early on. So this is kind of par for the course in that regard.
Yeah, and I love the point that you said, like, hey, they're still talking to Auburn. I mean, Landen Thomas in an interview with, I think it was Keith Niebuhr with AuburnLive.com, talking about how they text every single day. He's texting, he's getting texts from like Walker White, the quarterback commit, every few days. Like, he's still entertaining all of this, which I think that's a sign. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's a great point.
Right. And if you can look at it from the other side too. Okay. If you're a Georgia fan, hey, well, why is Auburn doing this? Well, if the recruitment is being reciprocated, it kind of is what it is. And as a prospect, it kind of behooves you to at least keep some avenues open, because so much in this sport changes at the drop of a hat. So it really does work both ways. But yeah, if there's clear reciprocation like there is at this point for this Colquitt County duo, you got to keep pressing.
Absolutely. All right. Could Auburn be in the running for one of the best interior offensive linemen in 2024? Looks like he's interested. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. And look, guys, it's the best place to wager on all of your sports action. It's the midway point of the NBA season. It's a perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because they are still doing the no sweat first bet. We talked about this with the Super Bowl. They've got it now with NBA games, no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if that first bet that you place with FanDuel doesn't hit. So you have nothing to lose. Go ahead and download FanDuel today. They've got props, odds, lines on everything. So don't miss this chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. It's a Cruton Thursday with John Garcia today. All right, let's talk about Casey Poe, this 6'5", 290-pound beast, absolute stud of a kid. He's a 4-star across the board, the #2 interior offensive lineman in most places, John. But every time this guy talks to a recruiting writer and he's asked about Auburn, he just gushes about how much he loves Hugh Freeze, how much he loves offensive line coach Thornton, how much he loves everything that they're doing on the Plains. How much are you buying into this right now? Because not a whole lot of people are really giving Auburn any kind of love or any kind of chances with Poe's recruitment.
Yeah, look, Poe's recruitment is really on the ascent, right at this moment, right? His junior tape got out. It was really good. Just check that out again this morning. He's got a whole lot of versatility to his game. I know he's an interior projection, plays tackle on every down on Friday nights, and a balanced offense. There's a lot of great run and pass blocking samples, and there's just not a lot of guys that have that on their resume, before their senior season. So you could see why that tape circulating and him making visits on top of it as these schools verify his size can lead to a really big uptick from a recruiting perspective. So yeah, he's visiting a lot of schools and picking up a bunch of offers. So it's hard to peg, hey, who's really in the running for this thing? But I think when you start talking about a hot recruit planning visits and Auburn coming up, I think that's where you start to see the interest. And we know with the Walker White recruitment, to bring it back to him,
right,
those things can change very quickly once you get on campus. And I think you're going to see a lot of that relative to Jake Thornton, because he's a guy who has had to recruit, beyond the traditional footprint at previous stops. And he's already doing that at Auburn, pretty much hitting the ground running. And clearly he's built a relationship with Poe, and now he's reciprocating with this visit. So you let the chips fall where they may after that point. But when you're an offensive lineman, you want to see an exciting offense. That is theoretically, set in stone here at Auburn, at least from a vision perspective. Right. And you want to see that element of balance, right? And we think this offense is going to look pretty balanced here going forward. And Thornton comes from that type of system at Ole Miss as well. So he's got something to sell. I want to say that relationship was kicked off before Thornton made the move to Auburn. So you've already got some history there with your potential future offensive line coach. And usually those things, uptick a little bit when you actually get the FaceTime and you get on campus. So once that visit goes down in March, I think we'll get a better idea. But there's not a lot of schools on his list. There's 4 or 5 that he's planning to visit, and it's kind of quiet after that. So again, these things can change in very short order. So to be on the upcoming visit list alone is a big deal for Poe, because like you said, he's a really strong recruit with a high floor, and his stock is only rising here as we get into kind of the bulk of spring ball and everyone really focusing on this class.
Yeah, I watched his tape earlier today too, John, just getting ready for this conversation, and I couldn't stop comparing him in my head to Braden Smith, the former Auburn standout.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities. I think Braden was a perfect fit off the field. I don't know Casey Poe off the field. It's hard to pick that up without talking to the kid. But as far as on the field, I saw a lot of comparisons there.
Yeah, Braden Smith, the guy who played a ton of tackle in high school,
right,
moved inside, and there was a lot of conversation around that. I remember in that recruitment, but my goodness, you talk about working out for all involved. It really did with Braden Smith. So you could see that, a guy who's, again, Braden was known for leverage and what he did at the point of contact. Same 2 things you see when you first start popping in that Poe video. So I like that on the surface level, because that's really what he's known for. He's known for moving bodies, and it sounds funny because that's what O-linemen are supposed to do, but not all of them are known. And most of them, we talk about projecting 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Poe is on the front end of that with the higher floor, much like we used to talk about with Braden Smith. So
yeah, I mean,
interesting comp.
He's taller, a little bit leaner too. I think body type wise, they're a little bit similar. John, let's move on to running back 2025 kid Alvin Henderson. Some folks when the rankings drop are projecting that he will be the top running back in 2025. Kid out of Elba, Alabama. Not gonna lie to you, I don't know where Elba is. You might, I don't know, but what are you seeing about this guy? It seems like both in-state schools are heavy for him right now.
Yeah, this is going to be a classic battle. I mean, you think of the best running backs to come through the state of Alabama, and you know it's an Iron Bowl battle, but this one will stretch. This will stretch to the Clemsons, to Florida State. This is Georgia's going to get involved here because this is a darn near grown man running the football in 2025. It's really crazy to see what he put on tape. As a sophomore, like over 2,500 yards, big downhill physical. And that Elba offense, it is old school. It is very much a throwback. And everyone in the building knows Henderson's getting the rock, and it still doesn't matter. It kind of reminds me of Kerryon Johnson at Madison Academy, where it was like, he's getting the ball, but, hey, we'll stack the box and all that. We'll still take our guys versus yours. Henderson's going to have his pick of schools, and he's already got, like you said, it's Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Auburn is, I think, in-state wise, because of Cadillac. Again, we talk about running backs.
Seems like
Cadillac's
he loves
coming
Caddy
up pretty quickly. That continuity is something that he really gravitates towards. So you're going to have a fighting chance with any running back recruit with Cadillac Williams on the staff. Another big reason why he was retained. And I think you'll see that going forward. Strength of the 23 cycle. And you're going to see that in 24 and certainly in 25 if Cadillac is still around. Because by that point, Henderson will have 3 years of true one-to-one time with Cadillac Williams. He was on that big junior day visit at the end of January. And I think he told somebody it was the best visit he's ever taken. It's early. But, you're starting off theoretically there in pole position, at least from the look and feel department, and you'll take that one. It's a blue chip, no doubter, type running back like Henderson is.
John, I've got his 247 page pulled up. In last year in 2022, 195 carries for over 2,600 yards and 47 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah. And it's not just speed either. He's not just outrunning everyone. He's downhill, runs behind his pads. He's running through folks and making you wonder.
That'd be a sophomore.
Is he really in 2025?
Yeah, he was just a sophomore, right? In 22? Isn't that right?
Correct.
Stupid. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
47 rushing touchdowns? That's wild. All right, how good is Walker White when you stack him up against all the other quarterbacks in this class? We'll get John's response to that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. John, I teed you up. Walker White, how good is he compared to the rest of the quarterbacks in this class?
It's early, obviously. We haven't, developed our own internal boards here, but among the quarterbacks I've already studied, he's right in the thick of it, among the best. I think top 10 is probably conservative in trying to view Walker White, especially relative to the overall skill set and the overall presentation. I think there are some less experienced or less physically developed quarterbacks that might have just as much upside, but now you're waiting, right? You're projecting and you're waiting to see how that rolls into the rest of this offseason and maybe the 23 season itself. But in terms of where they are right now, you could make a very easy top 5 argument for Walker White. He's among the biggest, 6'3", 230 or so. And he made such a big jump from his sophomore to junior year as a complete quarterback. Spun it well from the jump. Now we're getting that dual threat. We're getting that full modern package where, you can look at the numbers and say, hey, 16 rushing touchdowns, that's amazing. But to me, that's decision-making within those numbers, right? Because it's RPO. It's spread-based running. It's not all designed for him to just tuck it and roll. So I think the decision-making has taken a next step just as much as that athletic profile has theoretically taken the next step. So whether you look at it from what he can do now or a projection trajectory type perspective, Walker White's right in the thick of it. This class is not as deep at the top as we saw with the 2023 cycle, with the Arch Manning cycle. This one is a little bit more top heavy. It's 5, 6, 7 guys at the top, and we think there's a bit of a drop off. And I think Walker today, Zach, is on the front end of that cutoff, at least for me. And especially if you zoom out and look at how his recruitment went. I mean, this was a guy that obviously was very high up on Auburn's board. Alabama, Georgia, TCU, Arkansas, Ole Miss. I mean, all these schools had him 1, 2, 3 on their board. So when there's kind of that much unanimous appeal from spread offense types systems, I think you have to give them the benefit of the doubt as well. So I think Walker White is strongly in the top 10, but conservatively today, a top 5 guy based on what we know.
Do you expect him to be an Elite 11 guy this year?
Yeah, I think so. He fits that profile, that those circuits have evolved to really allow the quarterbacks who can do it in the pocket and on the move. They're the ones that shine brightest in these events. And that's exactly in the middle of Walker White's wheelhouse. So if he elects to compete, I think he's got a chance to get out to LA or wherever they have the final and really represent Auburn to another level, because he's already done a good job doing so as a recruiter.
Yeah. John Garcia, thank you so much for your time as always. How can people check out everything you've got going on?
Yeah, come hang out on social media. We're talking ball at every level at John Garcia _JR.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's the best in the biz. Be sure to check out all of my stuff at auburndaily.com. And we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.